Hey everyone, Amelia Mosley here and you're watching BTN. Here's what's coming up today. We get answers to more of your election questions. Find out about the royals that rule around the world. And Jack takes an in-depth look at the history of sausages. Can't wait for that one. But before we get to democracy sausages and the latest in the election, let's have a look at a story that concerns, well, all of life on Earth. A new UN-backed report came out last week saying the planet is heading towards a mass extinction and humans may well be to blame. Take a look.
If you're a human being living in the world today, and if you're watching this, I assume you probably are, life is arguably the peachiest it's ever been for our species. The data tells us we're getting richer, better educated, better fed, more peaceful. Obviously things are far from perfect, but historically speaking, pretty good time to be a Homo sapiens. For Earth's other inhabitants, it's a different story. A new United Nations report, put together by hundreds of the world's top scientists, has painted a very grim picture indeed for the world's plants and animals. The report says that nature is experiencing the fastest decline in human history, and right now there are 1 million plant and animal species being threatened with extinction. Yep, 1 million. That includes 40% of frogs, a third of marine mammals, and a third of all reef-forming corals. This species collapse is big enough to be classified as a mass extinction, when more than 50% of the species on Earth are wiped out. It's not actually the first time our planet has experienced a mass extinction. Or even the second, or the third. As far as scientists can tell, it's actually the 6th. These events don't tend to happen all of a sudden. Each generally lasts tens of thousands of years. The first one was more than 440 million years ago, when the cooling of the Earth killed off 60 to 70% of the Earth's species. Most of them lived in the ocean, and they didn't look much like the creatures around these days. A series of extinctions about 375 million years ago, probably also a cooling event, saw the planet fare well about 70% of its species. Then there was the big one, cheerfully dubbed the Great Dying, which happened 200 million years ago when the Earth warmed up by up to 10 degrees, killing 96% of species, including some pretty legit-looking creatures like pelycosaurs and therapsids. Then there was the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. And the last big one, which happened just the other day, about 65 million years ago, when these guys kicked the bucket, probably with the help of an asteroid or two. The geological term for the time we're living in now is the Holocene, and so the extinction we're living through is known as the Holocene extinction. It's thought to have begun about 100,000 years ago, about halfway through Homo sapiens' time on the planet so far. Some people call this extinction the Anthropocene extinction, anthropo meaning of humans, because scientists think that humans are the ones making this extinction happen. Or at least making it happen much faster. This UN report says that in the past 50 years, human activity has seriously ramped up the rate of extinction. We're clearing rainforests and wetlands to make way for cities and livestock, overfishing the oceans, and polluting with plastic and carbon dioxide. Our population has tripled and doesn't show any sign of slowing down. And if we don't make some serious changes, we could all go the same way as these guys. Of course, we've known for a while now that the planet's in trouble, and there are plenty of people right around the world trying to change things. The UK Parliament just became the first in the world to declare an environment and climate emergency after some big protests from a group called Extinction Rebellion. The UN report says solving this extinction crisis is possible. We humans need to set aside more room for nature, reduce the amount of plastic we produce, and do what we can to slow down global warming. It's a monumental task, but many say it is possible if we work together.
In which of these geological periods would you not have seen any dinosaurs? The Cretaceous period, the Jurassic period, or the Cambrian period? The answer is the Cambrian period. That happened way before the dinosaurs, about 500 million years ago. The dinosaurs were around in the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous periods.
If you've got a question about that story, I'll be around to answer it on Friday during Ask a Reporter. Check out our website for all the deets.
Of course, the big news this week and last week and, well, for a while now, has been the election. In case you've missed it, here's what's been going down. Unless something wildly unexpected happens, one of these guys will be the next Prime Minister. Leader of the Liberal Party, Scott Morrison, or Labor Party leader, Bill Shorten. And they've been working hard to get voters on their side. Some of the smaller parties have been making a lot of noise too. No surprise which big issue the Greens are highlighting.
We can't take our environment for granted.
And recognise this guy?
Aussie's not gonna cop it anymore.
It's musical Mr. Clive Palmer, who was once a Member of Parliament and is now attempting a big comeback with his United Australia party. It wouldn't be an election campaign without a bit of good old controversy. A bunch of candidates have had to step down because of inappropriate things they've posted on social media. There was an unfortunate egging incident, some awkward moments.
You're a classic space invader.
And some nice moments too. Like when Bill Shorten defended his mum after some claims in a newspaper article. And Scott Morrison backed him up. Then there was all the usual election fun and games. Sports and rec, high fashion in high vis, and all the baby kissing stuff. Wait, that's not a baby. It's even cuter. Now, if you've still got some questions about the election, you're in luck because we've got some answers, thanks to political expert Annabelle Crabb. Over the past few weeks, she's been answering questions from kids about politics and politicians and elections. Let's have a look at the final instalment of our Ask Annabelle Anything election special.
How does the government make sure everyone has voted?
Well, in Australia we have a special organisation that runs the elections. And actually, that's a system that was invented in South Australia, which is responsible for a lot of our election policies. The Australian Electoral Commission is an organisation that runs the elections. It is a completely neutral agency, because you can imagine if you had one of the parties running the elections, that would get very confusing very quickly. In the old days, actually, before Australia became a federation, they used to run elections at the pub, and the drinks would be paid for by the candidates, and people would vote by stepping up onto a stage and calling out the name of the candidate they were voting for. But can you spot the problem with that system? Basically, people would vote for whoever had just bought them a beer, so you could get elected if you had lots of money to spend on beer. Shocking arrangement. So, when Australia became a federation, we created an independent voting authority that would oversee the elections. So, if you've ever gone with your parents to vote on election day, first of all you go to the local school or hall or wherever it's being held. Hopefully you get a sausage and bread because that is traditional on voting day, or there might be a cake stall, which I really like. And then if you've ever gone in with your parents, you might see that they get their names ticked off a giant, big, thick roll of names and addresses. And so once you've voted and your name's been crossed off the roll, you can't vote again. Each person just gets one vote. And if you haven't voted, if at the end of the day your name hasn't been crossed off somewhere, then you get fined, because in Australia we take voting very seriously.
Do you think 16-year-olds should be able to vote?
Wow, that is such a big question. So I've grown up all my life knowing that I'd have to wait until I was 18 to be able to vote. I think there is a good argument for letting 16-year-olds vote. I think most of the 16-year-olds I know are not only highly opinionated, but really capable of researching issues that they're passionate about. Every time you change the rules, though, with voting, it's always a hotly contested matter because all of a sudden the parties are saying, well, if 16-year-olds could vote, would 16-year-olds be more likely to vote for me or for the other party? So that's what drives the arguments. I bet you anything you like, the Greens would like 16-year-olds to be able to vote because they think, there's lots of greenies who are 16. Let's get them to vote. This is the sort of arguments that happen all the time. Personally, I think that 16-year-olds, I'm very open to the idea of 16-year-olds voting. The sooner they become super responsible, the better for all of us, I think.
Is our voting system fair?
I think that the Australian voting system is incredibly fair. I'm really, really proud of it. And the more I find out about the history of the way Australia's voting system evolved, the more proud I am. I really like the fact that we ask all people of eligible voting age their opinion. We didn't always do that. In the olden days, women couldn't vote and Aboriginal people couldn't vote. And that was a disgrace in our history. And we sorted that out. And now we make sure that we ask everybody and we actually go out and seek out their vote and make sure they vote through our compulsory voting system. I think there are lots of countries in the world where the voting system is corrupted, where the people running the election are also the people running in the election, and that's bad. We've poured time, thought and resources into making sure that our voting system is incorruptible, and it's one of the great elements of Australian democracy.
There are heaps more of those Q&As online. Just head to our website to check them out. Now to something a little less democratic. I'm talking about royalty. It's been a big couple of weeks for the royals of the world, between a new royal baby and a new Thai king and a new Japanese emperor. So Matt decided to have a closer look at the royal rulers of the world.
You're a baby. Before you've been given a name, before you've done anything more interesting than poo your pants, people are already losing their minds over you.
Happy baby boy and happy mother.
Yes, we love babies.
We love babies.
Welcome to being a royal baby. Or rather, this royal baby. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor is 7th in line to the throne of the United Kingdom, under the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. While this royal family may be the most well known to us Aussies, it's not the only one. Thailand, for example, just finished crowning its new king in spectacular style. And then there's Japan, which just got a new emperor. In fact, there are dozens of royal rulers around the world. Sometimes they're called kings and queens, or sultans, or emirs, or grand dukes. All of them are monarchs. A monarchy is a form of government with typically a single person at its head, and normally people are born into that position. Once upon a time, monarchies were everywhere. People thought it was perfectly normal to have one person ruling everything.
Off with his head!
For some reason, it didn't always last.
Fetch me the grapes!
Over the years, many societies rebelled against their monarchs, and as the world changed, more people thought being born into the right family wasn't a good enough qualification for being leader. By the 20th century, a bucket load of royals got the flick, or their powers were drastically reduced. That didn't happen everywhere, and there are still a few royals that actually have a big say in how their country is run. But back in the UK, the royal family doesn't really make the rules anymore. That's up to the elected government and the Prime Minister. That form of government is a constitutional monarchy, and it's technically what Australia has as well. The British Queen is our head of state, and her representative is the Governor-General. While the GG doesn't often interfere with the running of the country, they have some important jobs to do, and the Governor-General has even sacked the government before. But for the most part, our relationship with these guys is about visits and handshakes and photo ops. And for that reason, some Aussies don't see the point in having a queen, and would prefer an Aussie was our head of state instead. Some don't think it matters. Some think King Matt would do quite a good job as a kind and wise ruler with unlimited power. Get me my slippers! What could possibly go wrong? Now!
Did you know that Prince Harry's name isn't actually Harry? His real name is Prince Henry Charles Albert David. Harry is a nickname.
We're from Pinnacle College, and you're watching BTN!
Next up, one of the world's biggest social media platforms is trialling a really big change. In Canada, Instagram is going to start hiding likes on people's photos. It's because some people are worried about the effect that little heart button can have on young people's mental health. Check it out.
I like to follow like meme pages, sometimes like dancer memes because I'm a dancer and I just find them really funny.
I do like to follow these horoscopes on Instagram. I find them really interesting. I'm a big fan of like Marvel and Harry Potter, so it's like good to keep up and see what's going on.
I use it to talk with my friends and mainly to follow like my favourite soccer teams.
While you might not be old enough for Instagram just yet, it's the place a lot of older teens go to check out, well, anything really. And while these are all interesting and pretty things, there can be an ugly side to Instagram too. There's been a lot of research lately on the impact social media sites are having on young people's mental health. And companies have been under pressure for the way they target young people. Whether it's turning a blind eye to underage users, encouraging constant use with Snapchat streaks, or turning your post into a popularity contest.
With likes and all that, they will just be like, oh, I got this amount of likes, oh, I'm so popular, I've got this, I've got that.
The likes, I guess, show that we are comparing ourselves with a number compared to people like, the people with millions of followers who are what we call Insta influencers to your everyday kid who has maybe 10 friends. And it's teaching us that the more likes, the better.
Social media companies are starting to recognise the problems and have been looking at solutions. For example, TikTok cracked down on underage users and brought in a security feature after it got slapped with a fine. And now, Instagram is trying out a big change that could have a massive impact on how the app's used in the future. The trial's happening in Canada at the moment. Over there, users can still like posts and see how many likes they get. But they can't see how many likes other posts get. Instead, they see this. The idea is that you won't be able to compare your posts to other people, and you won't worry so much about how many likes you're getting. Instead, you might spend more time looking at the actual photos and videos and just enjoying your friends. It's a big change, and not everybody likes it. For example, there are lots of people who make a living as influencers and rely on likes for business. Plus, some people just like likes and think they're a great way of connecting with your friends and the wider world by showing you what's popular and what people are talking about. Of course, it could be a long time before the change hits Australia, if it hits at all. So, what do you think?
I think it'd be a good idea because people like to compare with other people and like to showboat or boast to them.
I feel like influencers who get paid and they get their income through these likes, if they're not seeing the amount of likes they get, will that affect their income?
I think it'd be a good idea in the sense of you won't get judged anymore, because I know like a lot of people who will judge you on the likes. You have like friends will do it, classmates will do it, even siblings will do it sometimes. Like they're like, oh, you don't have as many likes as me, so you're obviously not that popular.
In the English Premier League, Manchester City has come from behind to clinch the title on the final day of the season with a 4-1 win against Brighton. It ended a fantastic challenge from runners-up Liverpool. Liverpool lost just one game all season and finished on 97 points, the club's highest ever points tally, but it wasn't enough to stop City lifting the trophy. Sydney FC has smashed Melbourne Victory 6-1 to book their place in the A-League Grand Final next weekend. It was the 50th meeting between Australia's biggest football clubs. Sydney will now face Perth in the Grand Final, who scraped through after a nail-biting penalty shootout. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's US hurdler Infinite Tucker. Not only does he have a very cool name, this Superman-style finish literally helped him over the line to win the 400-metre hurdles at SEC Championships in the US.
Hi, we're Burnside Primary School.
Finally, we promised you a story about sausages, and we're about to deliver. You see, Australia is known for its famous election day barbecues. You might have had a democracy sausage or two yourself, or if not, you might get one this weekend. So let's have a look at where this distinctly Aussie tradition began.
It was a brisk autumn morning. I was on my way to cover one of the biggest stories of my journalistic career, sausage sizzles.
Today's a big day for me. Today I uncover the little-known origin of Australia's democracy sausage.
An Aussie icon, an election day essential, a cooked cylinder of minced meat beautifully caressed by a slice of white bread. Delish. But where did it all start? Sausages have been around for thousands of years and have appeared in just about every culture in some way or another, from ancient Greece to China and Italy.
But what about the Aussie snag? Where did you come from?
The butcher?
Yeah, but before that?
Oh, probably Germany.
Oh, true.
In the 1800s, the Germans brought with them their famous sausages, like Frankfurts, Bratwurst, Rindswurst, Knackwurst and Bockwurst, all the best wursts. Meanwhile, the Brits introduced us to thick Cumberland sausage and the thin English breakfast sausage. But despite all that, it was a long time before the sausage was seen as a typically Aussie cuisine. And the sausage sizzle made its way into school sports days, fundraisers, hardware stores, and of course, elections. The very first election sausage sizzle is thought to have been held in 1940, changing voting days forever. It makes sense, really. Australia is one of the few countries with compulsory voting, which means there are lots of people turning up to vote, and sausages are a cheap and easy way to keep them full and happy. Over the years, the democracy sausage became a full-on Aussie institution, with plenty of leaders getting involved, either behind the barbie or chowing down on them. Although sausage sizzles can be scandalous. And no, not just because of the way politicians eat them.
The Aussie barbecue, nothing like it.
In 1989, the Western Australian Premier, Peter Dowding, was accused of bribing voters with free sausages. Mr. Dowding then accused the opposition of providing unsolicited sausages to would-be voters. Believe it or not, there was an investigation, which eventually found that providing free snags was not actually considered political bribery. Turns out it takes a lot more than a sausage to snag votes.
And despite which side voters sit on, or whether it's a sausage, a veggie sausage, or not a sausage at all, most Aussies can agree that elections just wouldn't be the same without this sizzling Australian tradition. I'm Jack Evans, BTN News.
Wait. That's behind the news. Well, that was fun. But that's all we have for you today. Have a great week and a great snag if you end up at a polling booth this weekend. And if you've got questions about processed meat or the election or politics or anything else, jump onto our website and hey, you might just find some answers. Oh, and don't forget to tune into Newsbreak on ABC Me and online every weeknight. See you soon.